Welcome to the Businessmen and Women of Color podcast. I am your host, Ann Alston, and it is my pleasure once again to bring quality programs to all of you. I am so excited to be here yet again with another amazing speaker who's going to be coming on here and talking about her journey and her new business, and she's going to be talking about her book. So please stay tuned to listen to this podcast as well as visit all of the pages and listen to all of the podcasts because these people are here to share such amazing information with all of you. So take advantage of this unique opportunity. Just in case you did not know, the purpose of the Businessmen and Women of Color podcast is to not only share our industry information, but we are also encouraging career seekers, working professionals to enter their line of work or to learn more about the new industries that's coming out. We would also like to take a moment to thank our corporate partners and sponsors, a family of authors, Butler Armstead Consulting Solutions, Human Resource Learning Center, J&F Enterprises, and Women Offering Wealth, along with many of our other business partners and sponsors who's helping to make this event a success. So today we have a very interesting speaker who has several different organizations going for her and a new book, and she's here to talk about that. And I want to bring to the podcast Teresa Hamilton. Teresa spent over 20 years as a survey research practitioner at some of the finest research institutions in the country. Some of them are University of Maryland, College Park, Arbitron Rating Incorporated, and Westat, a Fortune 1000 firm in Maryland. While she was there, she managed a large-scale survey program for the Centers of Disease Control, Environmental Protection Agency, and National Center of Health Statistics and the Washington Post. She also helped to create and assist with startup of the only center that trained government personnel in joint program and survey methodology research. She soon left that industry to become an entrepreneur, and she started two businesses. One, a family owned cleaning and painting business in Capitol Hill, and the other one is Make It Happen Incorporated. And with both of these, she hopes to help transform and help people realize their dream. She is also a self published author with her book, 8 Steps to Fulfilling Life, which she's going to talk about here today. So, Teresa, welcome to the podcast.
Oh, thank you for having me. I'm very grateful to be here.
Wonderful, wonderful. So, Teresa, tell us about who you are, where you're from, and how you got into that really interesting industry.
Well, I guess initially I grew up in Baltimore, Maryland, so that's my hometown. But anyway, I was always curious from a young age. I was curious about everything, and I also loved history and would like to invent and all of that kind of stuff. So anyway, as a result, as I graduated college, I graduated from Towson. I wanted to do something different, something unique, and something that would encompass all my goals and interests. And I loved history, I loved psychology, I loved sociology, and all of those things. And so as soon as I graduated from Towson, I ended up at the University of Maryland, College Park in their Survey Research Center. And then from there, I worked, as you mentioned, 20 years in the research business. But the only thing I realized, and most of you will realize who really have entrepreneurship under their belt, is that you love working for others, but there's something that just gnaws at you inside that, no, I want to do it this way, or no, I wasn't 100% happy with the quality, or I think I could do better in marketing, or whatever it is. But those desires just kept gnawing away at me. And at my last job, which was Westat, which is a top research firm, it's really an international firm who does most of the major government studies. I was there, I was making great money, making over close to $100,000 a year. But I love my job because I've always loved research, but I felt like I wanted something more unique. And so as I do with everything, I just prayed to God and said, God, you know what? I need a new direction to go in. And he said to me, and I can hear, for those of you who really can hear the small, still voice of God, he said, well, don't worry, you're only going to be at this job a year and a half. And so I was there for about a year and a half, and I was already on 100% travel. And anyone in the business knows when you travel, 80% travel, when you travel that much, you don't know if you're coming or going. You don't get to connect with family or friends, and you're living out of hotels. I had 2 sites in California. And so anyway, at the very end of about that year and a half where God said you're going to be moving, my boss came to me and said, you know what, we want you on 100% travel. And I had to make a real decision. 100% travel meant absolutely no life. So I asked him to give me a week to think about it. And he gave me a week to think about it. And just before I stopped working corporate, God had me sign up and get my business license and all of that kind of stuff. And so right before getting my business license and all of that, he comes to me with this idea to work 100% and be traveling all the time. And so I prayed to God about it, and God came back with the answer. And the answer was, this is your time. And so I quit that job with absolutely no money.
Wow.
I
Okay.
tell people it was like taking a leap from an airplane down because, as you know, you have your car note,
Mm-hmm.
you have a rental place, all of this
Mm-hmm.
stuff I had. But I just went on faith that God would make a real difference in my life. And so I quit that job. And then, as you know, when you make those kinds of decisions in that way, it really does take a major leap of faith. As a result, I had to move in with my family. But the one thing that I had to think about, well, what is it that you can do? And I incorporated a cleaning business. So I knew I could
Okay.
clean,
Right.
and I knew my brother could paint.
Mm-hmm.
And so I said, well, Lord, this is the thing I'll do to test my skills. I don't really know how to start out, but I'll do
Mm-hmm.
this. And so one of the things I always tell people that is if you have faith and you're on this journey with God, at certain points in time, he'll have people there waiting to help you. And I had a good friend, her name was Peggy Winsfield, and I always like to give the names out because these are people that really reach down to help you. And she was working on her PhD in math at American University, and she was also working on Capitol Hill with one of the top realtors in the country. Her name is Judy Seiden. And that top realtor, Judy Seiden, introduced me to, and literally the woman, Judy, looked at me and said, you just starting out? And I said, yeah. She said, well, I will help you build your business. And essentially she did just that. So I was very fortunate taking a faith walk with God to have a very successful cleaning and painting company on Capitol Hill. This was right before the housing bubble.
Okay.
So I don't know. So they had during this time, there was tons, I think, of business just going up in the
Really?
district. And so I was able to really feed myself and keep myself fed,
Okay.
like I said, right before that bubble.
Okay,
So
well,
that's
I kind of
pretty
want
much
to
how.
stop. I kind of want to stop you right here for just a second because I want to make
Uh-huh.
sure that we all digest all of this great information that you are sharing. And I'm gonna tell you, first of all, it's phenomenal how you kind of went there. But I want to take a step back to what you said in the beginning of your conversation about what you did as a researcher, and I want to kind of focus on the career aspect for a moment, and then we're going to
Uh-huh.
talk about your cleaning business and how that was actually started up because you was about to kind of go into that
Yeah.
segment. So when you were a researcher, because it's such a unique position, I don't really hear that much about. Can you break it down exactly what you trained in? Specifically, I think you have in your bio a joint program survey methodology. What exactly is a joint program survey methodology?
Okay. Well, actually, I'll just start back with survey research. That's the business that I technically was in. So,
Okay.
for example, before the advent or really the proliferation of cell phones, in order, there are companies, there are governments, and there are just private people who just want to know what people are thinking at all times. And these decisions, a lot of them are based on survey information. So although people don't like to fill out surveys, so many major decisions about, whether or not there's going to be development in a given area, whether or not they're going to offer additional children's activities, everything is based on a survey. And so that's what I did. I managed a call center, and so that's pretty much how I got started. Now, the joint program and survey methodology was along with WestEd, and I know a lot of probably not familiar with WestEd, but they're familiar with the University of Maryland and the University of Michigan. And both of these academic institutions, Michigan and Maryland, got together with WestEd, which is also a private group. And and what they did is they wanted to start a research practicum. So therefore, new graduate students would come in and learn strict research, survey research methodology. So that was the joint program in survey methodology. And in order to get there, we had to apply for a grant. And so I, along with other academic types, worked on writing a grant so that we could train government personnel to do that. So to be a survey researcher, I had no idea when I graduated college, and that's why I always say, for me, God is always in the center. And I knew I liked sociology, which survey research is about. I knew I liked psychology, personnel management, and I studied in both of those areas in college. And so when I graduated college, there was this opening, and really, I didn't even know about survey research methodology or that you could go. There was a program for it or any of that. I just happened to pray, and I met a woman who helped me, who worked for Maryland, and then that was her way of getting me in. And from there, the rest is history in terms. And I worked there at the University of Maryland for at least 10 years.
Okay, fantastic. Yeah,
Mhm.
because I really didn't understand what that really meant. And I wanted
Mhm.
people who are reading your bio to really get a really good feel of what type of career that is, because it's definitely an interesting career. And I do agree that we can't make decisions unless we absolutely know or what is out there or what people being surveyed. How can a small business owner leverage that type of information in terms
Well,
of working with in the I guess in the industry that you were in, is it mostly for government entities?
yeah. For example, when I worked at the University of Maryland, there was a woman who owned a real estate firm. It was a very small real estate firm, but she would come to us as a small business owner to find out different questions she had about real estate. And we would do the surveys for her, and what she would do is she would take that information and then market it to her clients. So survey research information is so critical, especially if you're in the marketing arena or you want to discover, tell people things that they didn't know. For example, a lot of books like Dale Carnegie did a lot of writing on, what are people thinking? What are successful people thinking or saying? How did he do that? He did that by asking survey questions. So survey questions and that there's such a huge phase. First, you have to develop the questions to make sure, I don't know, for those of you who remember taking some of these courses, like that the questions aren't double-barreled, having two different meanings. So there's a proper way to even develop questions. I also worked while I was at WestEd on the census questions. And some people think, oh, I'm going to take the census and that's it. But there's a lot of research that goes into how you ask a census question. Like we had to do cognitive studies to find out when we ask a question, how are people perceiving the question that we ask? So all of that, that's one phase. So that's what we call questionnaire design. And then the second phase is what we call data collection. That's the phase I was in, where I am working with the interviewers and the staff to train the interviewers to ask the questions, to train the interviewers what we mean by intent, and to train them how to record the information. And then once all that information is gathered, and that's why they call it data collection, then you have analysts and statisticians that come in and analyze the information that was given. So they run certain SBSS programs or programs to tabulate all of that stuff, and we call it tabulated in group form, so that we can then make an assessment about how people are thinking and what they feel about whether or not, the Mets is the all-time favorite team. It could be any of those questions. But almost every single organization uses some form of surveys, particular bigger ones, and then the smaller ones can use it to ask questions that nobody has ever asked. So there's just so many uses of surveys in
Okay.
that regard.
Yeah, well, thank you for that. I know there's a lot of businesses out there, particularly small businesses, that don't leverage surveys. I try to leverage surveys on my website, and I try to ask questions that I think people will most likely ask. But then there's a lot of times where we're not effective in getting the answers to our surveys. And I think what you've offered in this podcast is another avenue for people to
Yeah.
go and get information. And what I will do is connect with you to see if I can get the connection information so I can post it on the page so that people can go
Okay.
and
Sure.
solicit that, because that is some of the missing information that small businesses don't have. They only
Yeah.
know one or two ways to get information about their particular market, and it is
Yes.
already hard to try to get that information. And so what I try to do is connect with people like yourself to provide that information to make it easier for us to get that market, that target that we need so badly. So thank you for sharing that. Okay, so
Sure.
let's turn back to your business of the cleaning business. So you had me on a cliffhanger there, Teresa. So okay, so this lady said that she's going to help you with your business. So
Yeah.
what exactly did she do to help you
Well,
jumpstart your business?
essentially, she was a top realtor on Capitol Hill. So she essentially just sent business my way. So as a realtor, you always need someone to either clean or paint your home or make small handyman repairs. And so all she would do is when someone was ready to buy a house, guess what? She sent that business my way. She gave them my number, had them call me. And so for years, at least 7 years, I was able to truly build up a successful cleaning and painting company from that. And it was, I really enjoyed that aspect of it because even though I have this corporate background, here I am cleaning, and I remember my oldest sister said to my mom once, "You need to have her head examined. How could she go from being this corporate researcher making all this money to a cleaning person?" And really, actually, I really thoroughly enjoyed cleaning because for me at that time, I was learning to build a business from the ground up. And, for me, it's all about learning every single aspect of your business. Sometimes people just want to sit at the top and then look down. And when you know intimately every single job that is going on in your business, it helps you be a better top level manager. It helps you be a
Right,
better president or VP
right.
because you have done it, you know it, and you can you're very successful at being able to tell others how to make it happen rather than saying, well, I think you should do it this way. You know how you've done it. Now they may want to do a different spin, but at
Mhm.
least you know exactly what they're speaking about or talking about.
Right. It's always scary for someone who's starting a business to just cold turkey stop their full-time job and just go strictly on faith. It is
Yes.
so terrifying for folks to do that, but sometimes we have to step out on faith in order to make the next leap, or what
Yes.
I say, get pushed out of the hen's nest to fly,
That's,
because
yes,
that's the only way
definitely.
you're going to find out if you're going to either hit the ground or you're going to sail through the wind. And I just kind of encourage people to at least look at the full picture before they do that. But at the same
Yes.
time, plan for it.
Yes.
There's nothing wrong with setting yourself up for success so that when you're ready to stop your full-time job and go full into your business, then you have a lot of confidence.
Yes. And I really, to be frank with you, I had no confidence in my ability. I only had faith. Because despite my
Mhm.
successes, when you're leaving an income, and I always tell people that, we're so conditioned to want money, which we should want. However, there comes a time when you have to really look at what is it that is going to make me happy, and what is it that I'm placed on this earth for? What am I supposed to be doing? Am I just hanging out, or am I just because we then become slaves to money if we're not doing what our God given purpose, in my opinion. We then become truly slaves to the money. And so instead of becoming slaves to the money, we really have to consider, what, am I really happy doing what I'm doing? And sometimes for me, I always loved the work that I did in research. I love research, but when the environment is not conducive for my entire creative ability, that hampers me and my happiness, and that's really what happened to me.
Okay. Yeah, definitely you have to know when it's time to make a change. And
Yeah.
so you ended up with this nice cleaning business and it's flourishing. And then you decided, aha, I'm going to start another company, right?
Yes. Well, it wasn't just an aha moment. What happens is, and I believe that we're all on this journey. So God, I believe God takes us on a journey. So we're going around. Some of the paths are very straight, and we know where we're going. Some of them are curved, and sometimes we can't see around that corner where we're going. So what actually happened is the housing bubble hit. The good news about the housing bubble, and this is why, like I said, some principles you have to have is that even though I was still working, I was not working at the capacity that I was prior to the housing bubble. And when things start to change economically for you or the situation starts to change, then you have to start analyzing and going to God and saying, okay, now look at what's happening. What do you want me to do now? Because I feel like I've hit a dead end or a dead path. And so at that point, I also, as you mentioned in my bio, I had this group called Making It Happen. And I was working with a number of fellow entrepreneurs at that time. And God said, I want you to put more emphasis and more attention on this group. And so I said, okay, well, this is a great time because, of course, the housing bubble hit, so I certainly can't put out all that energy. And the
Hmm.
good news is that the company, York Enterprises, had absolutely no debt. So we would go, me and my brother at that time would go into paint stores, and literally we would be the only ones there. And we're like, well, what happened to this painter? Or what happened to this? And they would say, well, their debts became due, and therefore they had not a leg to stand on, so their companies went belly up. So we were very fortunate at the beginning not to get into any debt really, and so as a result, we didn't have those headaches. So I still did some part of cleaning and painting because it was my bread and butter and my ability to make money on a whim, no matter what. But then I put all of my energies on the Making It Happen group, and essentially what happened there is we just started to grow, started to build, and from there I met a partner, and his name was Doc Wilson, and I made a left or right turn, and then we kept helping people produce books. And we said, hey, we've helped a number of people do this. We should be able to do this on our own. So the very first thing we did is we started with my book called 8 Steps to a Fulfilling Life. And he was the editor there, and we did it once, and we said, gee, if we did this once for me, we should be able to do it for others. And
Hmm.
that's how I kind of got turned around into
Wow.
something else.
Wow. That sounds
Yeah,
amazing. I mean,
yeah,
it's interesting how your path, you think your path, like you said, goes straight. And then
yes,
all of a sudden you get a curve or a
yeah,
loop, and then you're
yeah,
totally in a different mind space and a totally different atmosphere and environment, and then your attitude and everything changes, and now you're on a totally different path going somewhere you don't even know now. But in
yeah,
the end you come out with a couple of organizations and a book, which is
yeah.
fantastic. So tell us what your book is actually about, your 7 steps. Love to hear more about that.
Well, one of the things that I always knew about myself is I'm a motivator. I'm probably one of those people that love to see other people successful, even more than my success. I think it's a gifting because not everybody has that kind of love for people. But me, if I meet you, I'm the first question I'm going to ask you is what are you doing with your life? What are you doing with yourself? And this was a natural thing that I would do. And I remember even when I worked at Arbitron, which is now Nielsen Ratings, I would go into work, and the people that work for me used to tease me because they're like, we're coming in here to do our job, but you're asking us what do we really want to do. And so out of that grew for me purpose, and that was my interest. Is I just wanted people to always be engaged in purpose no matter what. I wanted people to be clear and sure that they weren't just going through the motions for just to make money, but there was more to their life than that, because to me that's where your peace comes from. That's where your health comes from. That's where your wealth comes from when you really are truly operating in purpose. And when you're not operating in purpose, you hear people who are always sick, but they can't quite put their finger on why their stomach hurts or why they have these headaches. A lot of it is because they have built up angst of doing things that they really don't want to do, but still they're pressured to do because they got to make a living or they got to do this or they can't afford to not do that. And so as a result, I started on this journey of writing a book. And the first question I knew I wanted to ask people, it's called 8 Steps to a Fulfilling Life, is what is your purpose and do you know it? And so from there, we went from purpose to developing what I think is a positive attitude, which is a must for any entrepreneur. You always have to be thinking, I'm going to make this happen. You know, I'm going to make this happen with God's help. I'm going to make it. I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. That's my mantra. And so as a result, you then can take the pressure off of yourself to be up the best and to put a lot of pressure and headache on yourself. And then the third thing I incorporated in the 8 steps is prayer, because every now and again, all of us, we must have some sort of prayer. We've got to sit back and reflect or meditate and think about what it is that we want to do and where we're going. And to me, you can only do that with your belief system or your belief in God. And then the fourth step is performance. And I'm a real big believer. Most of the jobs I had I was a strategic planner, and you always must benchmark your performance. Am I where I want to be? You know, and if you're not, just like Tiger Woods, when he goes in and he hits that ball, he has a notion of what he wants to accomplish, what he wants to do, or Serena Williams, or any of those people, even authors, or Einstein. I love Einstein because he just never stopped at ensuring that he was able to find what he was looking for. He just kept it up and up and up until he said, boom, once he hit it. He never gave up. He's just full of passion. He didn't worry about the money. He didn't worry, unfortunately, that it was a real struggle for his family. He was just on a massive passion to find the theory of relativity, and then it grew from there. So I believe you must benchmark your performance. And then the fifth thing is dealing with pressure, because I don't think we talk enough about failure and pressure. Most people don't like to fail. And for me, and my bosses would look at me like, this girl is very weird. But I enjoyed making a lot of mistakes my first few times. Hopefully, most of them didn't cost the company money.
Right.
But what I discovered is that if I made the mistakes early on, I could learn from them. And then I look at it from being a novice to an expert, that it's only in making the mistakes that you get to that expert stage.
Right.
So you know what to do and what
Right.
not to do.
You know, I
And
have
so,
to make a point on that one particular one, Teresa, is that I think we spend too much time thinking about failure. I kind of feel the opposite is why we have so many people trying to find their purpose, or we have so many people who's talking about how to find your purpose, because there's people are just constantly focused on the failure. They're not focused on the successes. And one thing someone said in one of the podcasts is that we're so busy focused on the 95%, well, actually more of the 5%, actually. Let me correct it. They said that you focus more on the 5% of the failure and not focusing on the 95% of the successes. And I'm not sure, and I'm pretty sure I said it plenty of times, and I'll take it back, but there's too many things going on in society that's precipitating that. Okay. And we have to change our mindset, not just with people talking about it. We actually have to do it. We have to actually implement the positivity. And there is a such thing as too much positivity, because that can even turn negative, but we have to find balance. We have to find balance in whatever we do. And if we're not balancing ourselves, then we're going to constantly go through this roller coaster of, oh, okay, I'm empowered and I'm happy, I'm motivated, or I'm depressed and I feel like a failure. And it's just too much of that. And for me, I feel like that people focus too much on that and not on what they could do or could change.
Right. And there's research that says that, you know, when it's like sin, you know, when you're thinking about, oh, I shouldn't be sinning, you end up sinning more. So it's the same principle, is that when you think about, grace and believing that you're successful, and you start from, like you said, the positive and focusing on your successes, you will deliver more of your successes. And I totally agree with that, and I think it's an excellent principle.
Yep.
And
I
for
think.
me,
Hmm.
when people say like failure, my thing is, with failure is not failure, it's learning and knowledge,
Right.
and that we need to really get into. We say failure, but it's not really failure. It's you learn something out of that failure or out of that experience, and that's the mindset. And as an entrepreneur, you have to be, one of the things I stress too is reading. We have to read. It can't, and I'm not just talking about one type of book. I'm talking about all types of books. And a lot of times you are led to a particular book or a particular thing. And for me, I'm reading all sorts of things. And that's the kind of stuff that really helps to pull you up and round you. Even though you might not know a lot about physics, I might pick up something on junior physics only because something will spark something for me in the business. And so that's why it's so important to read and to learn. And I always just see myself in the state, like I said, of always learning.
That's fantastic. So, what other initiatives are you currently working on outside of your business and your book?
Well, one of my favorite, I have to say, I am a publisher. So I really, like I said, there's something about me helping other people. So I have a number of people that I've been able to help get their books published, and I really enjoy that. So for me, currently I'm working on a 600 book page book with an author. We've broken it down into two because a lot of people don't want to always sit down to read that. But just I'm a thinker, and I want to get people agitated to think more, And like I said, we do get little sound bites here and there, but we need to be engaged more and really critically thinking about what it is that we're doing, what's going on, because a lot of times we're sitting in front of television, and I like television. I don't think anything's wrong with it, but there sometimes you have to spend more time in other places than just kind of hanging out. And the critical thinking does so much, I believe, for your insides and your soul. And so for me, that's important, to help others and to get other people to think about, what has my life meant. And I really believe that we're here to be teachers for others. Each one of us has a different journey and a different path. And the one thing I love is that God did not make us the same. We're all individuals, and we all have our own unique personalities, even twins. And so God gives us kind of like our own little GPS or roadmap that we take. And when we take that, we're not just taking it for ourselves, like sometimes we think, and we can think about, oh, I got to make sure I have enough money. Oh, I got to make sure I'm in the best health. But really it's to share and help others to come along as well. And so when people finally write their book, I always see it as a moment of sharing, and the authors always come back to say, oh, I really helped this girl in India, or this person read my book and they felt this way, and this person was going to take their life until they read my book. So for me, this, I think, is one of the highest achievements for me, because it's our ability to give back to one another, and I think that's so important in society today.
Okay, fantastic. So, the last question I want to ask you is, with all the people that are listening to the podcast and participating, what do you need to help your cause or to help your business to thrive?
I think if I could think of one thing that I would need, and I wanted to share this with you, is that I am going to do a whole purpose movement, just a movement on regarding purpose, and I've gotten all my ducks in a row. And I really want people to be on purpose, and to be able to use our services, Imagination Press LLC, to be on purpose, because and I've developed purpose profiles, because there are people that don't know, and this is the survey part of me coming through, and this kind of goes full circle, but I've developed a personality profile that people can take to figure out what is their purpose, because there are some key indicators that will help people along by asking certain types of questions. And I guess that's the biggest piece of it. because that way they're able to help themselves, and then that's the business that I'm in ultimately, and that would help me as well.
Fabulous. Well, first of all, I want to thank you for being on the podcast and encourage
Sure.
everyone to please look into this type of unique industry. It is definitely something that everyone can benefit, not just small businesses, because there's tons of information out there that we need to know in terms of our environment, terms of spending, terms of things that we want to do in the future. So definitely look into this unique industry. Also, I want to encourage everybody to please go to all the pages and listen to the podcast, and also reach out to Teresa about some of the things that she's doing that in terms of her movement, her book, her business, so that she can continue to help people and move folks to purpose. And with that, Teresa, I want to thank you so much for being on the podcast and sharing your journey and your business and everything.
Yes, and one little final note. Thank you so much, Ann, because what you're doing is not going unnoticed. I really appreciate you taking your time and your effort to make this a reality, and keep up the good work.
You're welcome.